It's unacceptable, honestly. And yeah, there's no place for it. And we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing. I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base.
Anybody. And so for her to feel compelled to speak out in the way that she spoke out shows you how alarming what she was saying.
Imagine being a pro athlete and finding out you're fired from your teammates' social media. That's exactly what happened with the Chicago Sky's coach. It's not just one team though. The whole WNBA is struggling with some serious communication issues. Want to know how bad it really is? Let's break it down. The Chicago Sky players were scrolling through their feeds when bam, they see their coach, Teresa Weatherspoon, got fired. No team meeting, no official announcement, just a social media post. That's crazy, right? Now, think about how other pro leagues handle this stuff. Press conferences, official statements, the works. But in the WNBA, it's like a game of telephone gone wrong. And you know what's even wilder? This isn't a one-time thing. We're going to dive into more examples that'll make your head spin. It's not just about one team messing up. It's looking like the whole league's... You know how they say actions speak louder than words? Well, the condition of some WNBA practice facilities is screaming volumes.
Caitlin Clark's season with the Indiana Fever ended with an 87-81 loss.
It's unacceptable, honestly. And yeah, there's no place for it. And we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing.
Ever wondered what it's like to be a pro baller sharing court time with a bouncy castle? For some WNBA stars, that's not just a bad dream, it's their reality. You'd think professional basketball players would have top-notch facilities to train in, right? But the truth about where these elite athletes are forced to practice is shocking. Take the Connecticut Sun, for example. These WNBA pros had to share their practice space with a child's birthday party. Can you imagine LeBron James trying to run drills while dodging little kids and balloons? It's not just a one-time thing either. The Chicago Sky have been called out for their poor facilities too. We're talking about spaces that don't even come close to meeting the standards you'd expect for professional sports teams. It's like asking Olympic swimmers to train in a kiddie pool. Now, let's compare this to the NBA. Those guys, they've got dedicated high-quality practice facilities. We're talking state-of-the-art gyms, recovery rooms, film study areas, the works. But in the WNBA, some players are lucky if they get a consistent place to practice without interruptions. Imagine you're a WNBA player. You've worked your whole life to get to the pro level. You're at the top of your game, ready to give it your all. But instead of walking into a pro level gym, you're stepping into a community center that's also used for bingo night and aerobics classes. How would that make you feel? This isn't just about comfort or luxury. These subpar conditions have a real impact on player morale and performance. Think about it. How can you get in the zone and focus on improving your game when you're constantly dealing with distractions and inadequate equipment? It's not just about having a nice place to practice. It's about respect. It's about being treated like the professional athletes they are. When WNBA players have to train in spaces that aren't even exclusively dedicated to basketball, it sends a message. And that message isn't a good one. The worst part? This isn't new. WNBA players have been dealing with these kinds of conditions for years. It's a symptom of a bigger problem, a lack of investment in women's basketball. While the NBA rakes in billions, the WNBA is left fighting for scraps. But here's the thing, these women aren't asking for the moon. They're not demanding gold-plated lockers or personal chefs. They just want the basics, a consistent professional grade space where they can focus on their craft without worrying about sharing the court with a Zumba class. So, next time you watch a WNBA game and see these athletes performing at the highest level, remember what they're dealing with behind the scenes. They're not just battling their opponents on the court, they're fighting an uphill battle against a system that doesn't seem to value them as much as their male counterparts. The fight for respect doesn't stop at practice facilities. You'd think a professional sports league would have their communication game on lock, right? Wrong. The WNBA's got some explaining to do, and you won't believe who's calling them out. Let's talk about how WNBA news sometimes feels like it's coming from your high school gossip mill.
I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base.
You are a wonderful, wonderful woman. You are fabulous, and thank you for bringing up this subject.
I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it.
It's wild. Imagine you're a top player in the league and you find out you won a major award from Twitter. Not from your coach, not from the league, but from some random tweet. That's exactly what's happening in the WNBA. Media leaks are becoming a huge problem. We're talking about award winners being announced before the league can even get their act together. It's like the WNBA's secrets are written in invisible ink that only reporters can see. How's that for professionalism? But it gets worse. You know how when you reach out to a big company, you expect a polished professional response? Well, the WNBA Players Association didn't get that memo. Some of their responses to media questions sound more like they're replying to a friend's DM than making an official statement. It's like they forgot they're representing professional athletes and not just chatting on social media. Now, let's talk about the players themselves. They're feeling the heat, and not in a good way. Kelsey Plum, one of the league's stars, dropped a truth bomb about how the WNBA markets its players. She felt like she was getting special treatment because of her background. That might sound great, but it points to a bigger problem. What about the other players who don't fit that mold? Neka Ogwumike, the president of the WNBPA, didn't hold back either. She called out the league for not promoting its black stars effectively. In her words, the style, skill, and personalities of black women drive the league forward, but they don't get the credit. That's a pretty heavy accusation, and it's coming from the top. But here's where it gets really messy. Players are starting to feel like they're being held to different standards than their male counterparts. It's like there's this unwritten rule book that only applies to WNBA players. Say the wrong thing, you're in trouble, but when an NBA player does the same. Crickets. This selective outrage is messing with the league's image big time. And think about it. How can you focus on your game when you're constantly walking on eggshells? These players are some of the best athletes in the world, but instead of talking about their skills, we're talking about communication breakdowns and marketing mishaps. It's not just about hurt feelings or bad PR. These issues are like an invisible wall holding the WNBA back from reaching its full potential. Fans want to connect with their favorite players and teams, but how can they when even the players themselves are out of the loop? And just when you thought the WNBA was drowning in drama, a lifeline emerges. The Indiana Fever is building a culture that's turning heads. How are they managing to stay professional in a league full of pitfalls? Let's talk about the Indiana Fever. While other teams are struggling with social media meltdowns and birthday party practices, these ladies are showing everyone how it's done. They're like that one kid in class who always has their homework done and their pencils sharpened. But instead of being annoying, they're actually pretty cool. So what's their secret? For starters, they're not letting social media drama mess with their game.
Anybody. And so for her to feel compelled to speak out in the way that she spoke out shows you how alarming what she was saying, because if you are Caitlin Clark fans, there's no room for any kind of racism. Now, I'm not calling everybody racist. I'm not calling most folks.
Erica Wheeler and Kelsey Mitchell, two of the Fever's stars, are all about that team spirit. They're not wasting time scrolling through negative comments or getting caught up in online beef. Instead, they're focusing on what really matters, balling out on the court. But it's not just about ignoring the haters. The Fever's got a whole system for keeping their players in check. They're big on stepping away from social media to keep the team vibe strong. It's like they've got this invisible shield around their locker room, keeping all the drama out. And you know what? It's working. Now, remember how we talked about those other teams with their communication disasters? The Fever is not playing that game. They're all about clear, open communication. No surprise firings announced on Twitter here. When the Fever's got something to say, they say it to your face. It's old school, but in the best way possible. And let's not forget about those practice facilities. While some teams are sharing court time with bouncy castles, the Fever's keeping it professional. They're treating their players like the pros they are, giving them the space and resources they need to level up their game. But here's the real kicker. All this professionalism, it's actually making them better on the court. The players are happier, they're working better as a team, and it's showing in their performance. It's like they've cracked the code on how to run a successful WNBA team. So why aren't other teams following their lead? That's the million-dollar question. The Fever's basically handed everyone else the blueprint for success, but some teams are still stuck in their old ways. Imagine if every WNBA team took a page out of the Fever's playbook. We'd be looking at a whole different league. No more Twitter scandals, no more practice sessions interrupted by kids' parties, just pure professional basketball. Alright, let's talk about fixing this mess. The WNBA's got some serious problems. Communication breakdowns, practice facilities that are a joke, and a whole lot of unprofessional behavior. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. Imagine if the WNBA got its act together. They could set up some real communication rules so players aren't finding out about coach firings on Twitter. And those practice facilities? Time to upgrade. No more sharing courts with birthday parties. But it's not just on the league. Us fans, we've got a job too. We need to make some noise. Support the teams that are doing it right, like the Indiana Fever, and call out the ones that aren't. Here's the deal, the WNBA has got world-class talent. It's time for world-class treatment. Let's get loud and get this league the respect it deserves.